There is a kind of person who wants love more than almost anything, and destroys it every time it gets close enough to matter. Not because they don't care, not because they're cruel or careless or incapable of love, but because somewhere deep in the architecture of their nervous system, a calculation is running. A calculation that says, if you let this person in, they will leave. And if they leave after you've let them in, it will break you in a way you cannot survive twice. So you break it first, quietly, carefully. Sometimes without even knowing you're doing it. You push, you test, you pick the fight. You choose the one who was never going to stay. You leave before you're left. And then you stand in the wreckage and wonder why love never works for you, not realizing that you're the one who made sure it wouldn't. This is what childhood abandonment does, not just to the heart, but to the brain, and the mechanism behind it. The math your nervous system is running without your permission is what this video is about. Let's go to where it started. A child's brain is a prediction machine. From the day they're born, it's building models of how the world works based on what it experiences. If a caregiver shows up consistently, the brain writes a rule. People who love me stay. If a caregiver is warm and responsive, the brain writes another rule. I am worth staying for. These rules become the foundation for how a person relates to love for the rest of their life. Now imagine a different beginning. A parent who leaves physically, emotionally, or both. Maybe they walked out. Maybe they were there but checked out. Maybe they were present on good days and vanished on bad ones, and the child could never predict which version of the day they'd get. What the brain writes in that environment is different. The rules sound like this: people who love me leave, and I am not enough to make them stay. These rules don't get stored in memory. They get stored deeper, in the body, in the reflexes, in the way the nervous system responds to closeness before the conscious mind has time to think. The child doesn't choose to believe these things. They simply become the operating system. And here's what makes it so hard to change later. You can't argue with an operating system. You can't logic your way out of a rule that was installed before you had language. It doesn't live in your thoughts. It lives in your flinch. And the cruelest part is this. The rules were written to protect the child from pain, but they end up guaranteeing it. Here's where it gets mechanical. And naming the mechanism is important because once you see it, you can't unsee it. The brain that experienced early abandonment doesn't just remember the loss, it overlearns from it. It takes one departure and extrapolates it into a universal law. Everyone will eventually leave. This is what I call abandonment math. It's a prediction engine running in the background of every relationship, every attachment, every moment of closeness, scanning for the exit before it happens. And the math isn't stupid. It's brilliantly, painfully logical. Here's how it runs. If they haven't left yet, it's only a matter of time. The closer they get, the more it will hurt when they go. Therefore, the safest move is to control the distance, or control the ending. This is not a conscious thought. You won't hear it as a sentence in your head. You'll feel it as restlessness when things are going well, as a sudden urge to pull away, as a whisper that says, this is too good, something is about to go wrong. The math doesn't announce itself, it just runs. You feel it as a tightening in your chest when someone says, I love you, and means it, as a sudden need to check your phone when they haven't texted in 2 hours, as an inexplicable urge to start a fight on the best night you've had in months. The math is always running. You just don't see the calculations, only the results, and it shapes every move you make in love without ever asking your permission. So what does a child do with this math? They adapt. Not consciously, not strategically, but the way all children adapt, by building a system that makes the unbearable bearable. The first thing the system builds is a scanner, a hypervigilance for exits. This child learns to watch for the signs that someone is about to leave, a shift in tone, a moment of distance, a door closing with slightly more force than usual. They become exquisitely tuned to the micro signals of withdrawal. Not because they're anxious by nature, but because detecting the exit early was the only way to prepare for the fall. The second thing the system builds is a test. If everyone is going to leave the child reasons, then it's better to know now. So they push, they act out, they create a small crisis, and then they watch. Will you stay through this? Will you come back after I made it hard? The test isn't sabotage, it's an audition. And the tragedy is that most people don't know they're being auditioned. They just see the push and they step back. And the child's math whispers, "See? I told you they'd leave." The test was rigged from the start, not intentionally, but structurally. Because the behavior designed to test whether someone will stay is often the exact behavior most likely to make them go. And every departure confirms the original equation. The math gets stronger, the tests get harder, the wall gets higher. The third thing the system builds is a preemptive exit. If leaving is inevitable, then leaving first is the only form of control available. The child learns to disconnect before the disconnection happens to them. They pull away first. They go cold first. They end it first. Not because they want to, but because being the one who leaves hurts less than being the one who's left. By the time this child is an adult, these three tools, the scanner, the test, and the preemptive exit, are running automatically. They don't feel like strategies. They feel like instincts, like personality, like just the way I am in relationships. And now we arrive at the echo, the part where this shows up in adult love. And this is where it breaks your heart, because the pattern is so clear once you see it, and so invisible when you're inside it. The adult with an abandonment wound often falls for people who are slightly out of reach, unavailable, inconsistent. And when asked why, they'll say they felt a spark, but the spark wasn't chemistry, it was recognition. Their nervous system recognized the pattern, love that comes and goes, and mistook the anxiety for attraction. The familiar felt like home, even when home was the thing that hurt them. When they do find someone available, someone steady, someone who stays, the math kicks in. The closeness triggers the old prediction. This won't last. They're going to see the real me and leave. And so the sabotage begins, not dramatically, quietly. They pick a fight about something that doesn't matter. They withdraw for 3 days and see if anyone comes looking. They focus on a flaw in the other person and amplify it until it becomes a reason to leave. They create distance, then feel the relief of control, then feel the grief of loneliness, then reach back out, then panic at the closeness, and the cycle begins again. Push, pull, push, pull. It's exhausting. It's confusing for you and for the person trying to love you. They feel the warmth, and then the wall, the invitation, and then the retraction, and they start to wonder if they're doing something wrong. They're not. They're standing in the crossfire of a war between what you want and what your math says you can't afford to have. Every time, the same math underneath. If I let you in, you'll leave. If you leave, it will destroy me. So I'll leave first, and I'll be safe, and I'll be alone, and I'll call that freedom. That is the adult echo of childhood abandonment. The wound doesn't scream, it architects. It designs your love life so carefully that you never have to face the original pain again. But in doing so, it guarantees you'll never get the love that could actually heal it. And this is the part that most videos on this topic leave out. The sabotage doesn't feel like sabotage. It feels like self-protection. The brain that learned abandonment early has a hierarchy of pain. the top, the most unbearable, being fully invested and then abandoned. Below it, a distant second, being alone. The brain will choose loneliness over vulnerability every time, because loneliness is a known quantity. It hurts, but it's predictable. Abandonment after intimacy is not. It's the uncontrolled fall, the one that broke the child. And the adult brain will do anything, to avoid a second fall from that height. So when someone asks, why do you keep sabotaging good things? The honest answer is, because my brain has decided that a controlled loss is safer than an uncontrolled one. I'm not choosing loneliness. I'm choosing the version of pain I already know how to survive. And that choice doesn't happen in a boardroom in your head. It happens in your gut, in a fraction of a second before you've had time to reason. It's why you can sit in therapy and say, I know I self-sabotage, and then go home and do it again that evening. Understanding the pattern and interrupting the pattern are two very different things. One lives in your mind, the other lives in your body. So where does it change? It changes the same way all deeply wired patterns begin to shift, with a moment of seeing, not fixing, not forcing, seeing. The next time you feel the pull to test someone, to push, to withdraw, to pick the fight that doesn't need to exist. Pause. Not to stop yourself, just to notice. Ask, is this the present or is this the math? Am I responding to what's actually happening in front of me or to a prediction my nervous system wrote when I was 7? That pause won't feel like much. In fact, it will feel uncomfortable, like standing in an open field when every instinct tells you to find cover. Your body will want to act, to push, to test, to run. And the pause asks you to do the hardest thing an abandonment-wired brain can do. Stay with the uncertainty for one more breath than you think you can handle. But it's the first crack in the wall between you and the love you keep pushing away. Because the math was never wrong about your childhood. It was a perfect calculation for an imperfect situation. The problem is that it's still running in a different room with a different person in a life where the original danger is no longer real. You don't have to unlearn the math overnight. You just have to start noticing when it's doing the calculations for you, and gently, slowly, let yourself check its work. At Inner Lens, this is what we do. We don't just name what you're doing, we trace it back to why. The root, the adaptation, the echo, and the moment where seeing clearly becomes the first step toward choosing differently. If this one sat with you, the next video follows the thread into something quieter but just as deep. The normal things adults do when they were never comforted as kids. It's right here.